Welcome, everyone, to our installment today of the Historical Romance Virtual Reading Series. I am Catherine Grant, and I am super excited to continue our series today with another round of amazing authors. For those of you who haven't joined us before, this series is all about historical romance because all of us authors are going to be getting together in person this October at the Romancing the Gold Coast Conference in Glen Cove, New York. I'll be telling you more about the conference later, so if you have questions, feel free to type them in, but that is the theme that brings us all together, and we're very excited to think about seeing each other in person. And we wanted to hold this series so that you could have a sense of who you might be able to meet, what kind of books you can get signed, and what kind of fun you can have at the conference. The registration deadline is July 15th, so that's coming up fast. So just keep that in mind as you're listening to these awesome authors. I'm really excited for tonight in particular because as I was preparing, I noticed there's a pattern, which is all of these amazing ladies are USA Today bestseller authors. So we have some really great stories up our sleeve. The housekeeping notes I want to make, you can ask questions at any point throughout the evening. Just pop it into the chat section. In fact, for our first raffle prize, only people who are typing into the chat are going to be eligible. So be sure to type in, hey, or a question for Gina, or anything, just to let us know that you are there. I'm going to be watching that and pulling your name so that you get entered into the raffle prize. Other than that, we have 5 amazing authors, and we are kicking off with Gina Conkle, who is a historical romance author of Viking and Georgian and Scottish historical romance. So welcome, Gina.
Well, thank you, Catherine. I don't know if there's any people here, but I wanted to start by saying a huge thank you to Catherine Grant, who organized all this. There have been each Wednesday for, I think, the last 4 weeks, and for the next 2 weeks, next 2 Wednesdays, there are great historical romance authors reading some of their work. And Catherine Grant is the person who organized all this. She's done an amazing job. So I just want to say thank you, Catherine, very much for this. And before I read from The Scot Who Loved Me, I wanted to also just show you, I posted this on social media today, that my giveaway is this basket. It has a CD of audiobook of The Scot Who Loved Me. It has a Barnes & Noble, $25 Barnes & Noble gift card. It has a print book of Julianne Long, Angel in a Devil's Arms. It has, of course, some chocolate in there, some Godiva chocolate. And there's also really nice smelling rose sachets that are also can be soap. And then some cute little rose candles that you can burn. So that's my giveaway, my contribution for tonight. For anyone showing up, just comment on what I read, or ask any questions about how the series started or anything that strikes you. Otherwise, let's dive into The Scot Who Loved Me and Will and Anne, who have not seen each other in 8 years. Here we go. August 22nd, 1753. Torchlight flickered over a monster of a man sitting on the ground, his braw arms manacled to the wall of Marshalsea Prison's strong room, the outbuilding for troublesome criminals. The floor reeked of piss. Night soil scent clogged the air. Rebellion had a cost, and it was paid for in the shed. Anne crumpled a handkerchief doused with lavender oil against her nose and stepped gingerly inside. The warder's bruised eyes searched her hooded face. There's less beastly men I could show you, miss. No, he's the one I want. Chains clinked, the cold noise rippling over her skin. The sleeping beast stirred, shifting a tattered MacDonald kilt on massive thighs, and the bottom of a hairy ballock swung into view. See what I mean, the warder sniffed. Not fit for the kindness of your bosom. She was eyes on the beast, a generous purse dangling from her fingers. It's my bosom, Mr. Ledwell. I'll thank you to keep your concern to yourself. Grasping hands cupped the offering. You're paying a lot for one worthless Highlander. In the shadows, eyes of molten gold glared through lanky hair. Riveting eyes that stripped lesser souls. The brute was bound but not defeated, with his head tipped back and arms resting in fetters, as if he took his ease. The English could never conquer him. He'd rotted on a prison hulk at Tilbury Fort for his part in the Jacobite Rising of '45, and lived to tell the tale. But this imprisonment he'd done to himself. Why? She winced behind her scented cloth. Untended cuts and nasty bruises showed through his torn shirt. Still he was a sight. Blonde brown hairs glistening on rock-hewn thighs, a thickly carved chest whittling to a lean waist. With his size came a large nose and a wide, once familiar mouth. Passionate, soft, the only part of him that was, and utterly kissable. But those eyes had the power to mark a woman. Brash on his best day, moody on his worst, spite flashed in their depths at the warder, sifting a bony finger through the purse. Ledwell raised a polished coin to the light. A Queen Anne half-guinea. Don't see much of this fair lady. His thumb rubbed the stamped profile. Looks newly minted, too. You have 30 pieces of gold, as agreed, she said. Nor 30 pieces of silver? Mocking words climbed out of the dark. He speaks. She stepped closer, dank straw submitting to her foot. Ledwell is greedy, but he's no Judas. Husky laughter floated from the floor. And I'm no savior. The warder's face scrunched in confusion. The beast, however, fixed a keen gaze on her. With her hood pulled forward, a single torchlight lighting the shed, and cloth muffling her voice and hiding her face, Will couldn't know it was her. Yet for all her confidence, his presence tied her in knots, and he was the one in chains. What makes you think you can handle him? 3 men couldn't. The leering Ledwell slid the purse into a pocket inside his coat. Counting on your feminine wiles to get that filthy rag off him? She bristled at the unseemly question. Where did you find him? At the Ram's Head on London Bridge. Tavern maid said he sauntered in wearing his kilt, demanding ale. She obliged him till he was drunk as David's sow. That's when the night watch was called. Raised the hue and cry, did she? She did, and 2 watchmen hauled him here in a cart. Ledwell hiked up sagging breeches and sniffed, but it was me who bound him to the wall. Preening man. There was no need to glory in the downtrodden. It was bad enough the Dress Act out of 1746 outlawed kilts. If he was tied up, how did you come by those bruises on your face? Ledwell's chin jutted at 2 large feet covered in loose leather boots, the tops folded under big square knees. Kicked like a madman he did when we tried to cut off his kilt. Try cutting it off again and I'll break your nose, the Highlander boomed. It's within my rights. The 2 were ready to brawl, and manacled or not, she knew who'd win. She'd witnessed the former MacDonald enforcer train with one or both hands tied behind his back. Will's booted feet had probably knocked sense into the watchmen's witless heads when they tried to cut off his kilt, but the skirmish was less instructive for Ledwell. He paced the shed's tight confines, arguing his point. The man can't be gadding about in a torn kilt. It's an affront to the crown. I dare say the king would be more bothered by a naked man roaming Suffolk. She smiled thinly against her handkerchief. Now I believe you owe me a key. It isn't proper, he blustered. Her patience waned. That is not your concern, sir. It's mine. Ledwell planted his legs wide. A prisoner died yesterday. Big man he was. Squinty-eyed, he sized up Will. His breeches might be large enough. I'll know where a dead man's clothes. Will's snarl was deep. You will if I say so. She tucked away her handkerchief with the utmost care. Men. Strength was their vernacular. They lived and breathed it. She wasn't born with that knowledge, but being a fast learner, she'd acquired it as one must to survive London. For that reason, casual as you please, she reached into her lacy cuff and freed a knife with lightning speed. When you tried to cut off his kilt, did you use something like this? She buried the knife tip in Ledwell's soiled neckwear. Hot breath steamed her blade. 8 inches of sharp metal kept Ledwell against the wall, hands high in his bloodshot stare on the weapon under his chin. Here now, miss, I'm only doing what's proper for women, keeping a man covered and all. Proper? Now that amused her. What delicate sensibilities you have. She dragged the knife down his waistcoat, the metal clack, clack, clacking over wooden buttons. Let me assure you, any woman roaming the streets at this hour has seen a man Thomas or two. Ledwell's eyes bulged when the knife stopped at his man Thomas. You, sir, have a problem. My blade on your baubles. Throaty laughter rumbled in the dark. She score you there. Ledwell gulped. You made your point, miss. I fear I haven't. You've wasted my time carrying on about breeches and kilts. Why, I feel quite ignored. And men who do so do that at their own peril, she said in a voice one saved for difficult children. Let me remind you of our arrangement. You get a bag of gold, and I get the key to unlock the prisoner. Yeah, it's here. Ledwell's shaky hand searched his waistcoat and produced a time-worn key. She snatched it. Leave. The warder quit the room, muttering about unruly Highlanders and unrighteous women. She sheathed her knife, confident Ledwell wouldn't return with reinforcements. If he did, the boastful man would have to explain how a woman had bested him. Beyond the shed, terse footfalls echoed in the night. She listened, head cocked, until a door banged shut. Finally, she was alone with the former enforcer of Clan MacDonald of Clanranald. And that is my reading. Do we have any questions or?
That is so awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and just a reminder to everyone, we're going to be doing the raffle at the end of the Q&A. So if you do want to be entered, be sure to type in a question or just say hi or say how much you loved that reading. I would love to know, there were a couple of historical tidbits that I heard in there, like the kilt law.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, does your inspiration come from historical facts, or do you have inspiration and then you do research with historical facts to bolster it out?
I'm a total history nerd, so my inspiration for this series actually came from, I read about the lost treasure of Archaic. And I am going to be posting some stuff on my website about that. I was just talking earlier today to my husband about that, about how I'm going to maneuver it, because I don't blog anymore. But yeah, at the end of the rebellion, there were two treasures that were deposited on the west coast of Scotland. One was near Clanranald MacDonald land, and one actually was on Clanranald MacDonald land. And since, now in 2021, people have been able to track where some of that treasure went. Some of it is still missing. And so there are treasure hunters today who are looking for it.
Wow, that's fun.
So that's actually where that's actually the inspiration for the book and the series. It was sold as Ocean's 8 in post-Culloden London. So 1753, a band of 6 Scotswomen go to, because they hear that the treasure is in London, and they go to try to steal it back. And that's the overarching theme of the whole series. And in fact, this is something I've done differently, that the villainess shows up in every book, and she doesn't get her comeuppance until book 3, the end of book 3. So it seems like she keeps winning, but then actually you find out like gritty truths at the very end of book 3, which is what I'm working on right now.
That's awesome. It reminds me, I don't think it was treasure, but I saw a documentary about a stone that they took from Scotland and put in Westminster Abbey, I think.
The Stone of Stone?
Yes. That's
where they where they crown the kings. Actually, in 2006, my family took a trip there to Edinburgh, and we saw the Stone of Scone, and supposedly it's not really like the stone, like that. Supposedly it's rumor, I don't think it's substantiated fact, that the Scots actually they hid the Stone of Scone, and they gave the English a garter robe, basically a toilet seat, a stone toilet seat from a castle, and gave that to the English, and the English thought, yay, we won over the Scots. That was like back in the Edward Longshanks days in the early 1300s. And that, oh, yay, but they really left with the toilet, not the
I hope that's true. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. But And you write mostly Regency?
Yes, I write Regency. So I haven't gotten to researching Scotland yet, but I probably will eventually.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, thinking about the conference coming up, what are some of the things that make in-person conferences so powerful, in your opinion?
Oh, there's nothing like face-to-face talks about books that we love. I love talking about other writers of fiction and nonfiction who I love to read, and it's just a shared love of books. So I think that's that. And you know what? There is something very fun about dressing up in period gowns. It's like Halloween, but for adults, I guess. So and a ball, and I know that Kimberly is having she's calling it the party, Countess Kimberly's party, a high tea. I mean, who doesn't love tea and that the high
Right?
teas? Yeah.
I'm excited for that. And there's going to be a live harp, which I keep harping on
Mm-hmm.
because I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give a last call for people. Type in something into the chat if you want to enter the raffle. And Gina, now that borders are opening up and travel is becoming safer, do you have any research trips planned?
I'm sorry, any what?
Research trips?
Not this year, no. Next year, my husband and I are talking about going to Iceland.
Ooh, I've heard great things about Iceland.
Yeah. Oh, he would just there's a writers conference there, the Iceland Writers Retreat, and I've wanted to go ever since their inaugural retreat, which was 2014, I think, but it just never worked with kids and everything. And even before, when we were dating, I mean, we've been married a long time. Iceland was the one place that he was like, I would love to go to Iceland. So
there you go.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, I just had the brain thought, oh, maybe I'll be able to go to England next year. So I'm starting a wish list of where will I want to go so that I can plan a trip.
Yeah.
And while I grab these last names, Chelsea would like to know, do you ever use anyone that you know to inspire a character?
Yes. Yeah.
But you don't want to say who.
It's what I do is like my mom will ask me about sex scenes or mom, it is fiction. Because I mean, I've had people come up and say, I actually had one woman before I was published, she read something and she said, I know what you do in your bedroom.
Oh my.
I was so shocked, it's fiction. Her name was Lori. That was a friend of mine. But anyway, you take something from real life and then you extrapolate. Like sometimes I base characters on Greek archetypes. Sometimes I think about someone comes very vividly to life who I've met in the past. And then I sort of base the character on that person. But every character takes on a life of their own.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, drum roll. Would you like to hold up the raffle gift as I pull?
Oh, sure. Should I hold up each piece and say, also, if someone would rather have the print or ebook of this, I'm happy to just trade it out for print or ebook. It's reader's choice. And then awesome. I like to share other books. So there is this one from Julianne Long. And there's this came all the way from France, from Chateau de Goudain. It's rose scented. It's really wonderful. And then these little calendars and chocolate. Godiva chocolate.
Nothing to complain about there. And there's the $25 Barnes & Noble gift card, too.
Yes, right here, yeah. So you can go shopping for more books because we do love our books.
All right, so our winner is from the random generator, Julia Thornburg.
Hey, congratulations, Julia.
Congratulations. I'm going to send an email to you all connecting you guys after the event so that you can coordinate. But thank you, Julia, and everyone for being live. We have more prizes where that came from, so don't be despaired. You can still be a winner.
Yay!
And thank you again, Gina.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for organizing this. You've done a great job.
Thank you. It's been a joy.
Yeah. Bye.
So now I'm very excited to introduce our next reader, who is, again, a USA Today bestseller of Regency Scottish Victorian fairy tale and YA. So it's safe to say there's something in there that you're going to enjoy. Please welcome Tammy Andresen.
Hi.
Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
Perfect. Well, first of all, Catherine, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad to be here. This is a fantastic event. So, yay. Catherine, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here, and thank you. I'm glad to have you here.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Just making sure. Catherine and I were talking a little bit earlier, and we both are having crazy thunderstorms. So if something happens in advance, I'm so sorry. Outside of my window, I can hear thunder rumbling and clouds descending. So yes, apologies in advance in case anything goes wrong. But it's wonderful to be here. And as Gina said, Catherine, thank you so much for organizing this. This is really fantastic. So
absolutely, I'm so glad you guys could be here, and it just gives us an excuse to say on a dark and stormy night.
That's right. And it also gives us an excuse to it's been so fun to get to meet you because we hadn't met prior, and Gina to get to chat with her because I haven't talked to her in forever. And so it's so nice to develop that community too. And with our readers. So
yes.
Yay, yeah. Yeah. So the book that I'm reading from tonight is from my brand new release, Her Wicked White. It released just a few weeks ago, and it is the first book in the Dark Duke's Legacy series. They're a little bit longer than what I normally write, and just a touch darker. I don't have a wonderful book to hold up like Gina did, just because the series is so new. I have not gotten the paperbacks yet, but I would still like to share it with you. So yeah, I will begin. Her Wicked White. The heavy boots reached the top of the steep steps. It's him, Millie whispered, nibbling at her lip. Chloe looked at the dark-haired beauty next to her and unclasped her own hands to place one over Millicent's. It's all right, she murmured, not sure what else to say. He likely just missed you, and now that your father has passed, he wants a relationship. Chloe didn't believe a word of what she'd just said. Ben, as Millicent called him, had grown up the air, knowing full well that the entire dukedom would be his. He'd never shown a shred of interest in his sister, in anyone, if she understood the situation correctly. The man was likely a selfish bore. But Millie needn't hear that now, as it didn't help. And Chloe would do what she could to soften the situation for Millicent while still retaining her position. She had her principles, and honestly, she was the stronger of the two women, at least most of the time. Millie had her own demons. Chloe knew that. It's part of the reason the two got on so well. But Chloe had been forced to grow up quickly, be resourceful, and rely on her own strength and ingenuity to live. She'd used all of that to keep Millie safe. Chloe had a small reticule on her wrist which held her meager life savings. If she had to, she'd use it to support them both. Lord White, Millie's second oldest brother, would help. In Chloe's opinion, he was the only other White worth his weight, and she knew he'd keep his sister safe. Unfortunately, he was gone at sea, making his living in the transport of goods. What kind, he didn't mention, and she'd never asked, assuming it was best she didn't know. But their insistence on finding employment was a peculiarity of the Whites. Duke's sons, especially considering their father's lavish wealth, did not go out into the world and find professions with which to make a living. She'd had to, of course, but it was not been by choice. All of the White men had gone out and made their own way, even the eldest. It was curious, not that she'd ever asked why. Though Chloe had met Millie's father on a few occasions, including her interview, the man had frightened her half to death. Not the sort of environment that encouraged sharing. And now she faced the next Duke of Whitehaven. Her breath caught as she focused back on the present. The creaking of the knob made her hold her breath as she stared at the door. It swung in, and Whitehaven filled the entry. She didn't quite suppress her gasp. First, because he was large. She ought to be used to it by now. His younger brother, Lord White, was also massive, but somehow the Duke seemed even bigger. Was it a trick of the doorway? But also, he was handsome, dangerously so. His dark brown eyes seemed to penetrate into her very soul as he stared at Chloe. His jaw was square, his mouth set in a frown that made his features seem sharp. His neck appeared well-muscled, not even the cravat could hide the thick cords. "How are you?" he said, his voice a deep baritone that shivered down her spine. Fear skittered along her skin as she drew in a sharp breath. Had she planned to protect Millie? Her tongue tied as she continued to stare at him. "Hello to you too, brother," Millie said, standing. "It's nice to see you again." He grunted, his eyes flicking over to his sister. "Millicent." "Millie," she corrected, "and this is my companion, the Honorable Chloe Fairley. She's been indispensable these past few years." Chloe swallowed down a lump. Millie was clearly looking out for her and not the other way around. The Duke grunted again, barely glancing at Chloe. "And Destrian, where is he?" Millie shrugged. "At sea." "And when will he be back?" The man's voice could have cut stone, it was so sharp. Millie stared at her brother. "You'll have to ask him." Chloe's lips parted. Millie was normally very shy, near silent around anyone with the exception of Chloe and Des. The man's brows shot up. "If I could ask him, I wouldn't need to ask you." Chloe took a half step forward, swallowing her fear. The situation needed a mediator. It's nice to meet you, Your Grace." He didn't acknowledge her greeting in any way, nor did he look at her as he once again addressed Millie. "Do you have any idea when he'll return?" "Why do you wish to know?" Millie asked, her shoulders straightening. "That is my business," he bit back. "Answer the question." Chloe stepped in front of Millie then. This man was as surly and dangerous as his father had been. The best bet was to spend as little time with him as possible. "Your Grace, when he does return, we will happily convey any message you wish. Just tell us and we'll—" "No," came the single word reply. "You are dismissed." Chloe blinked. Dismissed? From the conversation? Her heart thud loudly in her chest. "Benedict Cumberland," Millie gasped. "Don't be absurd." "It's Whitehaven now," he replied, his lips thinning over his teeth. "I see that. And you're doing your best to act as beastly as our father. Well done." Chloe saw it then, the flash of uncertainty that filled his eyes. It was only there for a moment, crinkling the corners of his lids before it was gone. "Millie," he said, raising his hands, "take it back. You'll not dismiss Chloe. She's nowhere else to go, and besides, I'll need a companion to chaperone me." "Dukes don't take things back." That was his reply? Chloe's stomach churned. She was going to be tossed out with barely a word. What was she going to do? That is my excerpt from Her Wicked White.
Awesome. It's a great cliffhanger. I want to know what's going to happen next. So I'm curious because you write, across all these different subgenres of romance. Where do you get your inspiration for each story from?
Well, I do have to confess that I have dabbled, but so I wrote a couple of Americans to start, which didn't really work out for me. And then I have written primarily Regency. I tried YA because my writer friend and writing partner, wrote in it and loved it. And I did maybe 4 books, and they, it's funny because certain genres you find as an author just speak to you, like you might love reading them, but it's not the same experience writing them. So Regency is definitely my favorite because I really like the more humorous voice that I feel like the genre lends itself to. I also really like Scottish, but they're deeper and more serious in a lot of ways. And so I have to be in the right mood for those, or actually I can't find the inspiration, So I think for me, my favorite piece, Gina said she was a history buff, which I think is wonderful. And I love history too, but I am a character person. Like, the character is what jumps out at me first, either the hero or the heroine, and then the story builds from there. Who is this person? What would their life be like? What would their conflicts likely be? And so, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And we got some comments saying hi to your dog behind you.
Oh my God. That is Rose. Say hi, Rose. Yeah. She would be trying to visit us as I was reading, so she gets to be in the background. But yes. She is normally a house dog and with free range. So
does she inspire any animal characters in your books?
Oh, I love animal characters. So there have been a few. And I love children characters too. They always provide this nice balance of this fun, light element that's so great to kind of balance a story out. So
yeah. And so thinking about Romancing the Gold Coast, is there anything in particular you're most looking forward to seeing readers again and talking to readers about?
I think just seeing them, it's so funny because it's one of these careers where I feel like, especially the last year and a half, but I feel like we kind of live in a bubble where we don't always get to interact with them. And so it's just so nice to put names and faces together. And I feel like the readers I have met and connected with at conferences, it's just this deeper connection that I really enjoy. So, yeah.
Right. As Gina was saying, face-to-face is so different than a virtual connection.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, it's going to be my first in-person conference as an author. I've been to different types of conferences as just a person. So I'm very excited to, meet readers in person, experience. I'm kind of expecting there to be its own bubble where we're all historical romance fans. And so we all can just kind of exist in this fandom together. And there's things we don't need to explain. Like people won't ever be like, what does the ton mean?
Right.
So I guess I'm just excited to be a part of that community.
Yeah, me too. Me too. All of the conference I've been, I was saying earlier, it's like 95% contemporary and then this little group of historical over here. So it'll be super cool to be in an all historical conference. I'm very excited.
Yes.
Yeah.
And as everyone has said, I'm excited for the costumes too.
Yeah. 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 So.
Well, awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us for the reading today, Tammy. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in October. And I hope some of the people on the call today can meet us both there too.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you again for having me. This was fantastic and for listening to my reading. And I look forward to seeing everybody in October.
Yes. All right.
Good night.
Good night. So I'm excited to introduce another amazing author, a USA Today and New York Times bestselling author. We're switching gears a little bit from England and Scotland. We're heading over to Western cowboy theme. So please join me in welcoming Beth Williamson. Hi, Beth. Can't hear you, so let me make sure that you are not. It's still showing me that you're muted. Let's see. It's possible you'll have to jump out and jump back in.
Let's see. Did that fix it?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, user error. That was you. I was double muted. Have you
No
ever done that? Because I do that all the time.
We all know that story. We've all been there.
Yes.
So welcome tonight to the virtual reading series. We're very excited to hear from you. And I wanted to mention you also write under the name Emma Lang.
Yes, I do have a series of books under Emma Lang, and that's a story that's longer than 10 minutes to explain.
Awesome. Well, what are you
when we see each other in October, I'll give you the lowdown. But for here on out, and most of my books, 90% of them are under Beth Williamson.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you take it away and read for us tonight.
Okay. So I decided to read an excerpt from my newest, it's actually a re-release called Ruthless Heart. It is set in the 1870s in the West. It's one of my favorite books. It was actually published more than 10 years ago. And unfortunately, it was not too long after the 2008 crash, so books did not do as well in that era, and it was with one of the big publishers. So I got the rights back, and I've re-edited it and published it, and so I'm just going to go ahead and start reading. Eliza breathed slowly through her mouth to avoid the stench in the alley. She'd never imagined anything could smell worse than an outhouse, but apparently she'd been wrong. The darkened stretch between the two buildings was the ideal place to wait for the man she was following. However, she was loath to admit, even to herself, her courage was beginning to wane. It was dark, obviously smelly, and there were numerous noises around her she couldn't attribute to anything human. Her heart thumped madly while the reality of the world around her assaulted her senses with each passing minute. She nearly gave herself away when something dropped on her head, yet she held in a screech with effort, managing to squash the offending insect with only one long shudder as she wiped her hands on the grass beneath her. The man had been in the saloon for at least an hour. All she had to do was stay put until he left and then follow him. It was a simple plan. Eliza felt anything but reassured by the simpleness of it. What she had decided to do, what she was currently doing, she'd never even dreamed of, and that was saying a lot. Eliza had spent too much time dreaming of so many things she'd forgotten to step outside in the world. Now she was completely out of her element and scared. She had no experience in tracking or hunting. Realistically, she'd never been more than 10 miles from where she was born 19 years earlier. Yet here she was in the town she'd been forbidden to be in, alone, with a borrowed horse and as much courage as she'd been able to muster. All she had to do was remember her sister Angeline, and Eliza's fear seemed petty and unimportant. She pushed her glasses up on her nose and shifted her feet to relieve the discomfort in her legs from squatting for so long. All she could do was hope the man she was waiting for would appear before her entire lower half went numb. Just as she began to wonder if the stranger would ever leave the saloon, aptly named the drinking hole, a man emerged through the batwing doors. The light behind him silhouetted his frame, making him into a dark unknown. However, she recognized him from earlier when she'd watched her father pay him. Mr. Wolf was tall and rangy with a loose hipped walk that made him stand out in the small Utah town. His clothing was as black as the night around him, along with his hat, and likely his heart and soul as well. Eliza chided herself for jumping to conclusions about the man. There was no reason to judge him just because he'd been hired to hunt her sister. Or maybe there was a reason, but it wasn't Eliza's business. She didn't really care why he accepted the money, only about how she could use him to find Angeline. Eliza had to be smart enough to follow him without notice. Definitely easier said than done. He looked like a creature of the night, a predator. It sent a shiver down her spine. What was she doing? Eliza had lived her life in books, never venturing farther than she could walk, and here she was about to jump off a proverbial cliff. She had no experience in being on the trail, couldn't hunt or fish, and the only knowledge she had came from books and her own experiments. Panic clawed at her belly as the stranger stepped toward his horse. She either followed him now or she lost the trail to find Angeline. Another cliffhanger for you, Catherine.
I love a cliffhanger. I've got to get this book so I can finish it and find out what happens.
So yeah, it's one of my favorite books. That Eliza is a bespectacled spinster who lives her life in books. She's a closet scientist, and he's an assassin. So
one of those I can relate to very well. The other,
yeah, exactly. Spectacled.
That's awesome. So we've been on this theme of where do you get your inspiration? Are you more of a character person, a history person?
Well, I think for me, I gain inspiration by a lot of different things. For example, I live in North Carolina, and there's a lot of old houses, some of them run down, especially farmhouses. And many times I'll see, a dilapidated house, and I think to myself, who built that? Who did they build it for? And then ideas pop in my head. So, or it could be one of the really weird tales that you hear. There's a lot of weird things that happen in the South. So you hear a nurse story and you think, that's not even possible. Like right now, there's a zebra cobra loose in Raleigh with somebody's pet. And apparently it's extremely venomous. You can't make this stuff up. It just, so I get it. I get inspiration from there. And then it snaps on the imagination engine. and then the characters come. And I think, like Tammy said, I'm a very character driven writer. The history is important, and I make sure, and my editor makes sure, that is as accurate as possible. But I think without the characters telling me the story, it just doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And when you were returning to this story that you had written 10 years ago,
Right.
you find that it was easy to get back into the inspiration part of it, or did you kind of have to remember what you had loved about it?
No, like I said, this is one of my favorite books. It's actually a series of 3 books, and this is the first one. It was one of those ideas where you're batting something around with someone, and they're like, okay, let's put together 6 of the weirdest things and put them together. And that's how that one came about. So it's still very clear in my head. And I kind of, at that time, was very much a big fan of Bones, the movie. Or, I'm sorry,
I was
yes.
too.
So I kind of imagined her like Temperance Brennan, where she was really smart, but not a copycat by any means. She's not as forceful or as blunt, but and of course, as an assassin, you want that character arc where the bad boy becomes, a hero in the end. So, and also for me, a lot of my books contain social issues because homelessness, battered spouses, people losing their property, getting held up, all of that happens today, happened then. So, I mean, I've had a homeless heroine before. So, yeah. So, having a woman in this time period who was a scientist was very unusual. So there's always a little bit of social awareness for my own sake too.
Yeah, I mean, fiction is such a great way to build your empathy towards people that it's hard to have empathy maybe in real life because you're stuck in your own perspective.
Yep.
So that's great. We're hearing some people who love Westerns and also love Bones. And I actually, I have a Bones story that I'll go ahead and share it.
Go ahead.
It's embarrassing. I went to Northwestern University and there's a library there called Booth Library. And so my freshman year, my first week, I was a Bones fan, and I was like, Booth Library. And Brennan went to Northwestern in the semester.
Okay.
So I bonded with somebody by writing a fan fiction episode, and I put it in a manila envelope, and I sent it to Fox.
Nice.
I never heard back, though. So.
Oh, well, that happens. I interned at a television production series, and I did a slush reading, the slush pile.
Okay, so you
might don't get an answer.
My terrible episode.
Well, that's fun. That's fun. So you're obviously a Bones fan too. So you will identify with Eliza. You'll see some glimmers of, a super smart woman who doesn't use contractions and uses her book knowledge to figure out answers to things.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading her story.
Good.
So, Beth, I know you have a couple of raffle prizes to give away to our lovely audience members. So the first raffle prize is a free ebook of The Reader's Choice from your author library.
Yep, any of them.
So I'm going to go over to myrandom.org. Drum roll. The winner is Megan Edwards.
Yay, Megan!
Yay, Megan! Okay, so I'm going to email you guys after the event to connect you.
Okay.
And the second prize that we're giving away from Beth is a $10 Amazon gift card. Get yourself a couple of books with that.
Exactly.
Random generator number 4, Jacqueline McMurray.
All right, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
All right, so thank you guys for being on here. Thank you, Beth, for offering these amazing prizes.
Thank you, Catherine, for all of this hard work. I know you did a lot of work, so thank you so much for coordinating this.
Well, I'm happy to do it, and I really can't wait to meet you in person. So thank you for
bringing
me.
It'll be fun. Kim, I've known for 10 years, and she's been planning this event for almost 3. So this is this is going to be an epic event.
Absolutely. All
right.
right. So thank you so much.
Okay. Bye. Good night.
All right. I am super excited to introduce our next reader. I can see her. You guys can't see her yet. I'm very excited for you to visually see her because she's got a great outfit on. We've got Heather Snow, who is another USA Today bestseller of historical romance. And speaking of scientists, she also is a chemist. So welcome, Heather.
Hi. No, I've been laughing behind the scenes, particularly with all the, scientist heroines and the Bones references, because my second book, Sweet Deception, was pitched as Bones Meets Bond. And it's about a lady criminologist who solves murders using numbers and forensics. And she runs into a childhood friend who is now a spy, and they have to solve a series of murders in Derbyshire. So I've been laughing this whole time. I'm like, man, great minds, we all think alike. So
adding that to my TBR right now.
It's a good one. I loved it. She's my favorite heroine to write just for that reason. But before I forget, I did not send raffle prizes ahead of time because I just thought we would do it here. So I am planning on giving away an ebook of choice and an audiobook of choice. So awesome. Sorry about that. I'm in full baseball mom mode this summer. So it's like everything is last minute. Like I know where I have to be, which ball field I have to be at and when, and that's about it. So
well, no problem. We're excited to have you here, and we're also excited for those prizes. So thank you.
So this is my hat, one of my favorite hats. I'll be wearing with an outfit that goes with it. You'll have to wait to see the outfit till you get to the Romance in the Gold Coast. So it's a lot of fun. That's one of my favorite things about going to a historical conference is just all the fun outfits, seeing what everybody comes up with, and just getting to dress up and pretend like we are back in the time that we write about and that we love. So excited to see you there, hopefully. So I am going to read today from my third book, which is called Sweet Madness. This is the paperback. This is kind of the trade paperback. But the reason I chose this one is, well, first, when I was trying to decide what I would read, I realized that I am a beginnings person. Like I was trying to pick, like, should I pick something in the middle? Should I pick something smexy? But really, for me, I'm one of those writers that has to write chronologically because the story unfolds for me. Being a scientist, I'm a big plotter, but it never works out that way because I'm really a character-driven kind of author. And if I don't know where the character is emotionally, I can't go forward. So I've learned that the hard way. But for me also, beginnings are super important. I need to know the atmosphere. So I'm going to pick something from the beginning of this one. And I chose this one because it was different than anything else I'd ever written in terms of, it was a little darker, obviously with the title Sweet Madness. It was a little darker. It was also the book that I thought would ruin my career because I didn't think that readers would really want to meet their heroine or their hero hanging naked from a chandelier in the midst of a madness kind of mania episode, but it did okay. And a lot of readers have said it's a favorite. So I'm going to read from that one. Okay. Chapter 1, the West Midlands, February 1820, shortly after the death of Mad King George III. So Lady Penelope Bridgman, Baroness Manton, alighted from the carriage, her sturdy black kid boots crunching gravel beneath them as she stepped onto the drive of Vickering Place. At first glance, the 17th century mansion looked like any other palatial spread. No fewer than a dozen chimney blocks jutted from the slate roof, each spouting puffs of smoke that spoke of toasty fires within, keeping the residents of the brown brick home warm in defiance of the chilly February winter. Ivy strangled the west wing of the structure, as well as the walls leading up to the entrance of the main house. The vines were brownish green and barren now, but Penelope imagined they would be beautiful to behold come springtime. So would the large ornamental fountain that fronted the house when it was once again filled with water, as well as the acres upon acres of parkland that surrounded it when they were greened up and in bloom. However, Penelope fervently hoped she would have no occasion to visit Vickering Place in the spring. Indeed, she wished she wasn't here now. The carved oak door was opened for her before she even gained to the top step of the stoop. Lady Manton. A thin man, clad in the serviceable black suit, greeted her by her name, though they had never met. She supposed she shouldn't be surprised. Visitors were likely regulated here and expected well in advance. Mr. Allen, I presume, she inquired, pulling her dark wool cloak tighter around her as a frigid wind nipped across her nape. She stamped her feet in an effort to warm them, her eyes shifting involuntarily over the man's shoulders to the roaring fire she could see blazing from a hearth within. I am he, Mr. Allen confirmed stiffly, but he did not step aside to allow her inside. Penelope rubbed her gloved hands together and looked pointedly at him. Finally, the man relented. Please, do come in, he said, but his tone was clear. He did not want her here. She slid sideways past him before he could change his mind, grateful for the blast of warmth as she crossed the threshold into the well-lit foyer. Her eyes were immediately drawn to the painted ceiling that arced high above, depicting fluffy clouds and a blue summer sky that faded into the throes of a brilliant sunset around the edges. She hadn't expected such a cheerful scene. A woman's desolate wail sliced through the hall, raising the hair on Penelope's arms, even covered as they were with layers of wool and bombazine. The high-pitched cry was cut off abruptly, leaving only an eerie echo ricocheting off the marble walls of the foyer. Penelope shivered. That was more in line with her expectation of Vickering Place. The illusion that the manor was still a country mansion fell completely away. Certainly the flocked wallpaper of gold damask, the plaster molding and expensive artwork that lined the walls spoke of its aristocratic history, but Vickering Place had been sold by its owner and converted to a private sanatorium for lunatics, a place where the wealthy sent their sons and daughters, their mothers and fathers, their wives and their husbands, for treatment, or simply to hide them away from society, as Michael's family had done to poor Gabriel. Mr. Allen, she noted, seemed unruffled by the noise, almost as if he hadn't even noticed. One grew used to it, she supposed. Allen extended an arm to usher her into what appeared to be his office, and as Penelope took a seat in a plush armchair across from his stark, imposing desk, she strove for a similar sang-froid, even as her stomach churned with nerves. I'm afraid your journey may have been in vain, my lady, Mr. Allen began, lowering himself stiffly to his own seat. It seems his lordship has descended into a fit of mania this morning. When he gets like this, he can be very dangerous. I cannot in good conscience allow you near him, for your safety's sake. Penelope winged a brow high at the subtle condescension in the director's nasally tone. She pursed her lips. Allen, apparently misinterpreting the reason for her irritation, said defensively, I did send a messenger to the inn where you're staying, but he must have just missed you. I'm sorry you had to come all this way. Penelope barely resisted the urge to snort. The only thing he was sorry about was that she'd come at all. She waved a dismissive hand. Your man delivered the message in plenty of time. However what? She'd been a fool not to anticipate this sort of resistance. She'd gotten spoiled working with her cousin Liliana, the Countess of Stratford, over the past year and a half, treating ex-soldiers and their families. No one ever questioned Liliana because she was a woman. Her cousin had a brilliant mind that commanded the respect of her peers, male and female. Penelope, however, had neither Liliana's intelligence nor presence. She chewed her lip, trying to imagine how her cousin would handle Mr. Allen. She took a deep breath and stiffened her spine. Well, she didn't know exactly what Liliana would do, but she knew how her own formidable mother would handle the man if this were a domestic situation. She adopted her best lady of the house tone, all clipped and commanding. However, it is my understanding that Vickering Place is a private sanatorium. Your guests are here voluntarily, at the behest of their families, are they not? She raised both brows now, staring Allen down, at their very expensive behest. At his stiff nod, Penelope could almost taste her victory. She reached into her cloak, efficiently pulling out a packet of letters from Gabriel's family detailing their wishes. Her hand trembled a bit as she leaned forward and handed them across the desk. Then I expect to see his lordship immediately, in whatever condition he may be in. So.
And you mentioned he might be not in a good condition.
He was not in the best condition, but it was like, I ended up actually on this one, I ended up adding a prologue to it so that the readers could meet Gabriel as he truly was. Just because I wanted, and it was the first time he met Penelope as well. So about 2.5 years before this story starts. And I think that helped a lot kind of establish him as a character and her as they were, because this story takes a very tragic turn in this 2.5 years. And so when you meet these two characters 2.5 years later, they're both broken in their own way. And so it turned out to be a really beautiful story of healing and having to reach deep within themselves to be the person the other person needed. So it was really, it was terrifying, actually. It was terrifying to write. I was really nervous about it. It had some darker elements in terms of what happens to both of the characters, but it turned out also really emotionally beautiful, I thought. So, yeah. And I really liked her as well, because the two heroines before this one were both scientists and both brilliant. And so Penelope was, at the beginning, your average debutante, sweet, nice, nothing bad ever happened to her. And so I had to take both of these characters and break them pretty badly for them to find their happily ever after. So mean me. So.
Well, and how did you find the way to write about what was just kind of known as madness back then, but that we have so much more understanding of as a modern reader? Did you find it difficult to kind of straddle that?
Not really. I think I had done a lot of it anyway before. My first book was about a lady chemist. And so, that was my degree and my study as well. So it was, I was used to kind of taking and extrapolating what they may have known into things that they could have been doing at the time. And there was a lot, what I did with Penelope in this book is I made her very intuitive. And so she would definitely read about the different things that were going on. But really, this book is about treating PTSD. And so she'd already been working with that through her cousin because they were dealing with battle fatigue in another book. And so it was really kind of taking who she was as a person and applying some of the theories that were already going there and sort of extrapolating that. So any of the things that I write, I do a lot of research. I love research. Scientists, we love research. I do way more research than I can actually put in a book. But, humans are humans, and they knew a lot of things, or they knew that they knew some of it and not all of it. And so it's really easy to take what's going on in that time and sort of just extrapolate a little bit, use some common sense, and make a really good theory of how she might have handled things. So if that makes sense.
It does. And I imagine you chose a year, you anchored it in the year that the Mad King George died. So I imagine tying it to that madness reinforces that there was an awareness of madness.
Right. And the different treatments that he would have gone through that were very barbaric, and a common sense, why would you do that to someone? Let's do this instead. So there were definitely historical anchors that I could use for sure.
Yeah. And is this series complete? Are you working on a different series now?
So this one in itself is complete. I think I am going to write another set of scientist heroines, but move it forward about 20 years. I have a lot more to work with, and I have it sort of plotted out. But I'm also writing some that are a little bit lighter. And not that mine are dark, because they're not. But they are a little more serious, and some people just like light stories as well. I find that I try to write light, though, and I can't. They end up getting serious, because as you delve into characters, people are serious. And I tend to write a little bit more realistic in terms of those emotions, and so there has to be a really good reason for those. So I try to write light, but they usually have some sort of theme, some kind of heavier theme running through them. So I haven't done a lot of writing lately. I know I mentioned that I'm a baseball mom, and I have boys that are soon to be 10 and 13, so it's a lot of baseball. So I was hoping to have a new series complete by the time I got to Romancing the Gold Coast, and I'm not going to. But I hope I will have something done by then. And then a new series out by this time next year is sort of the plan.
That's awesome.
I could only learn to write at practice, but I'm too busy watching. So.
Right? Well, we'll have to catch up with you in person to find out how that series is going.
Sure. And I also, speaking of the Bones character, the Bones meets Bond characters, I have actually started spinning them off. They're going to be their own historical mystery series as a married couple who solves crimes together. So I have been working on that, and I have a beautiful cover already done. I just got to finish the book. So.
That's awesome. I love a historical mystery, so I'm definitely going to get ready for that by reading the romance and then move along. Okay, so you mentioned that you have 2 raffle prizes to give away. So everyone pretend that there's a drum roll happening. For the ebook of the Reader's Choice, let me just make sure I have everything here. Yep. Okay. The random number generator. Da-da-da. Michelle Temple. Congratulations, Michelle.
Yay.
Let me check this. And then we have the other prize is an audiobook of your choice.
Love audiobooks, and they will read so much better than I did, I promise.
I know, I wanted to almost organize an event where it's just the audiobook narrators who are doing the readings.
So good.
All right, we have the winner is Angela Diamond. So congratulations, Angela.
Congratulations, Angela. I hope you like audiobooks. If not, hopefully you'll give this one a try and like it. So I tell you, with boys, that's all I can do hardly anymore is listen. Because I sit down to read and they pile on you. So.
That's awesome. Well, I will connect you all after the event so that you can claim your prizes. And thank you, Heather, so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, and thanks for organizing this.
Absolutely. I can't wait to meet you in October.
Same here.
All right. So just for everyone, since we're coming up at the hour mark, we have one more amazing reading from another USA Today bestselling author. And then I also have I'll tell you a little bit more about the conference and a final raffle prize at the end of that. So that's what you can expect. And so I'm very excited to welcome our next and final reader of the evening, Meara Platt, who is a USA Today bestselling author of Regency Romance. Welcome, Meara.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for having me with you. I appreciate it. So,
absolutely. We're super excited to have you.
Yeah. And I just wanted to let the readers know that the Gold Coast Conference is right in my backyard. And it's just, the area is just beautiful. It's literally the Gold Coast Mansions. And the conference is going to take place in the mansion at Glen Cove. And when my daughter was getting married, we actually went to look at it. And it's just beautiful. It's gorgeous. So we didn't take the place, but I'm really looking forward to meeting everybody there, to being there, because it's stunning. It's a beautiful place. So
it is. We're super excited.
Yeah, I am too. And also for traveling, it's like it's perfect. In New York, there's so many things to see. If you come to New York, you've got the city, you've got beaches on Long Island, you've got so many things. You've got the whole Gold Coast of all those historic mansions, the botanical gardens, everything at your fingertips right there. Theaters, restaurants. It's going to be a wonderful affair, and I'm really looking forward to spending the time with the readers. We connected. I've connected with many of my readers at various conferences, and I really feel when I write, I think of them as I write, because I know that very much our heads are often in the same place. We enjoy the same kind of humor, the same kind of these same kind of historical romance stories, and we just have a good time. We connect. If they were neighbors, we'd be friends. I know for sure. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. So anyway, I was going to read an excerpt from, this is my book, The Promise of Love, that comes out tomorrow. Actually, it'll download tonight on everybody who's pre-ordered. And this is actually book 10 of my Book of Love series, which has just been just phenomenal fun. And the whole idea of it came around as I was browsing at a book conference and met a neuroscientist who had written a book called True Love. And he had worked up this whole thing on, the effects on the brain when you fall in love, and how it affects all your senses, the five senses, and I guess the whatever amino acids and the chemical reaction that you get when you start to fall in love, when you feel the attraction. So from there, I got this idea of writing this fun series about what if these young girls these young ladies in Regency, England, they're about to have their come out, in London society, and they're nervous. They don't know. They want to find the man that they, a man that they can love and who'll love them. And wouldn't it be fun if they found this mysterious book that held the secret to making a man fall in love with you? And so that started, The Look of Love first came out. And now we're on book 10, and book 11 is up on pre-order now. It's called The Wonder of Love. And I'll have another one coming out probably. I'm just finishing The Journey of Love now. That'll be book 12. And we'll see how far it goes. As long as readers want to read it, I'll write them. I love them. And so I was going to do a reading of The Promise of Love, but the chapter's too long. Took me the way I read, took me about 15 minutes to get through it, and I didn't want to spoil it. So I figured I would do the book that came right before it. This is book 9, The Heart of Love. And this one is up for a Roan Award this year for Regency, for Best Regency. So I figured, let me start it, and I hope you enjoy it. London, England, May 1821. Whatever Heather Farthingale expected to see while in the garden at the break of dawn was not the big Scot, Robert McLaurin, tumbling over the high stone wall of number 1 Chipping Way and dropping like a giant boulder onto the decorative wood fence that stood against the garden wall. Robbie! He did not tumble so much as crash down and land flat on his back atop the bench that was never going to support the muzzled heft of him hitting it with such impact. Heather was not surprised when the bench began to sway precariously, or when the wooden slats gave an ominous groan and sharply cracked. She winced as the entire bench collapsed beneath his magnificent body, leaving him sprawled and dazed in all his golden glory. Well, there was no point denying that Robert McLaurin, captain in the Scots Greys, the Crown's most distinguished cavalry regiment, was splendid in every way. Bollocks, he muttered, his words slurred as he gazed up at the early dawn sky. Who moved the bloody wall? Well, perhaps this was not his finest moment. Robbie, are you hurt? Heather hurried over to him and knelt by his side, ignoring the dampness of the grass now seeping through her thin robe and night rail. The sun had barely peaked above the horizon, and she doubted any of the servants were stirring yet. She'd only come outside to calm her betrothal jitters, especially since tonight was the night of the Marquis of Tilbury's grand ball, and she would be standing by his side now that they were soon to be married. But here she was, unable to sleep, where her stomach was in a tight coil, and never thought to encounter anything but the light breeze against her cheeks and the soft twitter of birds in the blossoming trees. She had not expected the morning serenity to be shattered by this big Scot hurling himself over the wall from the fashionable Mayfair street known as Chipping Way and crashing onto the charming bench designed for sitting. He smashed it to bits with his less than elegant dive. Are you drunk? He did not need to answer. She smelled the ale on his breath and the acrid scent of cheap perfume on his jacket. Ugh, you reek. He lay atop the soft grass, blinking his eyes as he tried to focus on her. Pixie, is that you? Yes, it's me. I ought to be furious with you. But she was afraid he had truly been injured. Getting him tended before he did more damage to himself was more important than lecturing him on the evils of his Raquel life. She wasn't even certain he qualified as a true Raquel, because he was too hardworking, had a well-defined code of honor, and had always been a complete gentleman in all his dealings with her. What are you doing here at this hour? Looking for you, lass, and I found you. How's your ankle? Completely healed, thank you for asking. He smiled at her with enough warmth to melt the frozen sea. But this was Robbie's way, wasn't it? He knew how to turn on the charm whenever he wished. Perhaps she was being too hard on him. He had never attempted to take advantage of her. Quite the opposite, he'd appointed himself her protector and been quite wonderful to her until the Marquis of Tilbury had come along and taken up the role. She shook out of her thoughts and touched him cautiously, afraid he might have broken a bone or cracked his head. Oh dear, the wood sliced your arm as it broke apart. You're bleeding. Please don't move. Let me get help. He caught her hand in his rough palm, his touch surprisingly gentle. No, lass, give me a moment, and I'll manage on my own. Don't be stubborn. You need help. You fell off the wall. I could have fallen off the roof and not hurt myself. When you're that drunk, your body does not feel it. You must be jesting. If you ever dare climb on the roof, I'll grab a loaded rifle and shoot you off it myself. I'll keep that in mind, he said with a warm smile that brought out the handsomeness of his features. Just get me to the kitchen. I'll tend to the cut on my own. What are you doing out here at this unholy hour? Isn't Tilbury's ball tonight? As his betrothed, you'll be standing by his side. You want to make him proud, don't you? Yes, she frowned at him. You had better sober up before the party. I won't have you showing up in your condition. He reached up and caressed her cheek. Heather, he said, pronouncing it heather in his thick brogue. I cannot go, lass. Why, Robbie? Are you still angry with me? She wanted to cry, for his presence mattered to her more than she would ever dare admit. He did not appear quite so drunk as he gazed at her with gorgeous eyes the green of a lush Highlands glen. She had expected to find them reddened and dissipated, but they were surprisingly alert and clear. This was Robbie, somehow always looking splendid, even when he ought to look like something the cat dragged through a fetid alleyway. Even now, despite the gray light of dawn, a lone sliver of sunlight managed to shine down on his head, so that his beautiful mane, cropped short at the sides and thick on top in military fashion, appeared golden. This was one of his most irritating qualities, his ability to look as glorious as a Scottish sun god, no matter what befell him. He caressed her cheek again. I could never be angry with you. Why would you think such a thing? Because you left town so suddenly after the New Year, and we never got to read that book together. You also stormed off after rescuing me the other day at Dahlia and Ronan's house. Now my sisters are worried because they think I've put a hex on myself by not reading the book with you as I promised I would. He closed his eyes and moaned. Oh, the book of love. I have it in my pouch. That's why I came here. I meant to return it to you. She glanced around. I don't see your pouch. Bollocks, it's on the other side of the wall. She rolled her eyes. The one you almost broke your neck climbing over? He sat up slowly. Aye, that one. My friends were supposed to toss it to me. Some friends, she muttered. Were they the ones who heaved you over? You might have broken your neck. She suddenly gasped and scrambled to her feet. What have they done with the book? Do you think they took it? They can't. I need it back. She had no sooner said the words than an object came flying at her head and struck her cheek. She reeled and would have fallen had Robbie not caught her in his arms. Pixie, are you hurt? He sounded quite shaken and did not appear at all drunk now. She was surprised by how quickly the pouch smacking her in the face had sobered him up. He shot to his feet with such speed she realized he could not have broken any bones, or else he would never have been able to move so fast. Thank goodness for small mercies. He held her in his arms and was now stroking her hair, possibly to calm himself as much as it was to calm her. Her hair was in a loose braid down her back and probably unkempt since she hadn't bothered to brush it before coming down here this morning. She hadn't expected to encounter anyone. "I'll be all right in a moment," but she had to rest her head against his chest when she suddenly felt lightheaded. Her heart was still racing from the shock of being hit, but as she was now pressed to his chest, she could hear the rapid pounding of his heart and knew he had been rattled as well. "I'll kill them if they put a mark on you." She eased back and touched her cheek to the spot that was now throbbing. It also burned lightly and felt moist. She suddenly realized why. "Robbie, am I bleeding?" The blaze of fire in his eyes and the gentle sweep of his thumb across her cheek was all the answer she needed. Tilbury's grand ball. She would now be facing her guests, and worse, her betrothed, with a bruised cheek. What if it was swollen too? How was she to appear elegant when she looked as though she'd been caught in a street brawl? "We'll fix it, Heather. You'll look like a beautiful pixie, as you always do." He glanced at the pouch that had landed at their feet, the straps now loosened, causing it to fall open to reveal the book's red leather binding peeking out. He bent to retrieve the pouch and then surprised her by also lifting her in his arms. "What are you doing? I can walk. You're the one who needs carrying." He laughed softly, a deep, glorious rumble. "Oh, lass, I'd topple on you and squash you like a bug if you ever tried to lift me." "But Robbie, you fell and now your arm is bleeding." "I've suffered worse. You're the one my pawky friends hurt. Is your head still spinning?" She nodded. "How did you know?" "I can see it in your eyes." She wrapped her arms around his neck because she was indeed feeling a little woozy. Or was it giddy? She could lie to herself and blame it on the pouch hitting her face, or she could admit the truth she'd always dreaded. There was something about this big Scot that always made her head spin. And now he was back after being away for months. She squeezed her arms tightly around him and hoped he would not mistake it for a hug. Perhaps it was a hug. She was glad to have him back. She'd missed him. "My little pixie," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. "I missed you too." She wanted to cry. Why did he have to come back today of all days? She was about to make her first formal appearance beside her betrothed. She and the Marquis of Tilbury would soon be married, and she would be a marchioness. This was her dream. This had always been her heart's desire. Ever since she was a little girl, she had always said she would grow up and marry a marquis, be a fine lady, and live in a fine house. But Robbie had returned, bringing with him the book of love. Was he about to shatter her childhood dreams? Okay. So that was it. That's the first chapter of The Heart of Love. And all the books in the series are basically about this mysterious book of love that somehow magically finds its way to bringing the hero and heroine together, helping them find true love.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry, I have a couple of internet issues going on, so there we go. Okay. Thank you, Meara. That was really fun and interesting, and we've got someone calling Robbie a hunk, which I don't disagree with that. There are no lies. He sounds pretty great.
Yeah. I love these Scottish heroes. And I have this family, the McLaurin men, who are they're military, they're big, they're hunky, total alphas, but just wonderful. And I really, really have a lot of fun with my readers with them. And the English counterpart to these alpha heroes are the Bradens, and also big, hunky military. So we just have a lot of fun matching these heroines too with these wonderful guys. If they were real, we'd all be drooling over them.
That's awesome. So you said you started this series specifically, you had this book in mind. In general, as you've developed the series and as you've written other books, do you start with the plot or with characters?
Yeah, definitely with characters. And very often they will speak to me. As a matter of fact, in these next three books, and the journey of love, when I had put in the proposal to my publisher, it was actually the hero's brother who was supposed to be matched with the heroine. But the hero just started talking in my head, and he was just saying, "Oh no, my brother's not touching her. She's mine." And so, I had to go with it. But so very, very much character driven. And, and I find it very easy to build the plot and the whole story once I have a firm handle on the on who the two the hero and heroine are going to be.
That makes sense. And as you started this Promise of Love series, did you know it was going to be 12 plus books, or have you been adding on?
We've just been adding because we've been having so much fun with it. You know, it started as a 3-book series, and it was 3 friends originally, one of whom was actually browsing in the bookshop. And as she's in dire straits, she's got a horrible uncle who's her guardian, and he just wants to give her to one of his friends, you know, the typical horrible, awful, awful older man that she doesn't want to marry him. And so she's kind of desperate, but she's browsing, and the book just pops on her head, drops it. So she picks it up, puts it back on the shelf, drops on her head again. So she looks at it, and it's a book of love. So why not? She's got to get it. And we just start. That's the hero happens to be in the bookshop with her, and that's how the story starts. And we've just had fun. So she and her 2 friends have used the book of love, but you know, it has the secrets to, you know, goes into what attracts people to each other, and talks about the 5 senses, and talks about like the workings of a man's brain, the innate brain. You know, as you see, like, you know, male animals, you know, why they're always, you know, butting heads, who's going to control the pack, who's going to mate with the pack. It's all very much, you know, this is like biologically, we're like predetermined, these patterns, these biological patterns that are designed for the success and continued population of the families and of the world in general. So they have there's all these things that they're learning about, and they say, okay, we're going to try them out and see if they really do work on men, and who are we going to use as our test frogs. And so one of the girls has a brother, and the brother has 2 friends, and they decide they're going to use these guys as their test, because they're safe, right? What can happen? And it's just funny. It's just gone on from there. We had so much fun with it, and so we did another 3 that were also very popular and lots of fun. So we did another 3, and now we're on another 3.
That's amazing. It's like the Sisterhood of Traveling Pants.
Exactly. That's it. And I laugh again. It's like, you know, that's what it is. This book, and it travels. And one heroine gives it to another, and many of them are related. They're the Farthingale heroines, because as yummy and hunky as the McLaurens and the Bradens are on the male side, I also find that my Farthingale heroines are just a bundle of fun. They're independent. They're it's like my Big Fat Greek Wedding, that kind of family. It's like, you know, all kinds of madness can go on, but they're very traditional. Just mayhem just follows them. Oh, something's always going to happen. And the poor hero is going to be involved, and he's never going to know what hit him, but all of a sudden he's caught in it. So it's just fun.
Yeah, that is fun. And have you been able to go to England or anywhere in the UK for research trips?
Yeah, I mean, I've taken trips to England before, a couple, and just love England. Can't wait to go back. Won't do it this year, maybe next year, hopefully, as things, you know, open up and whatever. And I've gone up to Scotland, and it's just that country is so beautiful, and it has so much history. Everything, just from, you know, London, and you walk into Westminster Abbey, and you see the kings who were buried there, and the queens, and all these famous Shakespeare, and all these famous people, and who came out of there, and it's just amazing. And then the countryside, so beautiful. So yeah, we have to go, Catherine.
I know. Let's plan a trip together. Let's do it. Let's take Romancing the Gold Coast to England next year.
Absolutely. I'm
Kim?
there.
Kim, we're going to put you on that. Well, I know you have a couple of prizes to give away. We're giving 2 winners their choice of an ebook from your author library. So if everyone can please, on your personal desks, make a drum roll. The winner of the first free ebook is Chelsea Waters. Congratulations, Chelsea.
Congrats, Chelsea. Yep.
And drum roll again. The second winner is Michelle Hayes.
Oh, Michelle. Hi.
So thank you guys very much. Congratulations on the
Awesome.
prizes. Meara, I'm going to connect you with them after the event so that you can get them their ebooks.
Yep. Happy to do that. Yep. Thank you so much to the participants too. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Meara, for reading with us tonight.
Catherine, thank you so much for putting it all together.
Absolutely. I
appreciate
do
it.
have one more prize to give away to everyone, so don't go anywhere. I am going to tell you a little bit about the Romancing the Gold Coast Conference, and then I have another prize for you, as I said. So let me just share my screen. Romancing the Gold Coast, this is going to be the inaugural event. So someone mentioned it's been in the works for about 3 years now. It was going to premiere last October, but unfortunately, COVID happened. And so now it is this October at, sorry, I was just making sure you can see my screen. It's this October 21st to 24th. It's a weekend event in Glen Cove, New York, which, as Meara mentioned, is in the Gold Coast area of Long Island. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Long Island, that's basically where The Great Gatsby took place. So this is the mansion where we are going to be. It is from old New York wealth. It is historical, and it makes you feel like you could imagine some of our favorite, dukes hanging out here. I could totally see a ball taking place and someone walking down that staircase in a beautiful ball gown. And maybe that will be me, because my sister's making me a ball gown, so I might just walk down that staircase when we have our costume ball. So in this weekend, there are a lot of really fun events planned, and the whole theme is just to help us all step back, feel like we are in a historical romance era, and more importantly, connect with each other about how awesome historical romance can be. So one of the primary things you can do is meet some of your favorite authors. These are pics of Kimberly, who has the purple hair in the pictures. She is the organizer of the conference. And these are pictures she took with some of our authors who are going to be there at previous conferences. As I said, this is the first inaugural Romancing the Gold Coast Conference. So this is just to give you a sense of how friendly Kim is, and also how friendly all the authors are, and how we can't wait to take selfies with you when we're together at the Romancing the Gold Coast Conference. There are also a lot of really fun events. The marquee events are the tea party, which will be a high tea, and I think I mentioned, there's going to be a harpist. And then there's also going to be a costume ball to cap off the whole weekend. So in addition to that, we also have some author speed dating, so you get a chance to meet as many of the authors as you can, book signings, and then workshops like historical crafts, how to make your own masquerade mask, Georgian bingo, how to play cards like the Regency people who are always losing fortunes on their vint et vin and whatever it's called. So you can pretend to lose your fortune or win a fortune. And then the costume ball will be the final event. It's going to be catered by the private executive chef of the mansion. There's going to be a DJ, and I hear rumors there's going to be Thriller and a line dance, all in costume. So it's going to be a very good time. And as I mentioned, the registration deadline is coming up. It's July 15th. So make sure that you register for the weekend. The weekend itself is October 21st to 24th. So that is a little bit about the conference. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in here. I'm watching, and we also have the conference organizer on. So, like I said, I do have one more prize to give away, and that is a prize from my collection. I write Regency romance, and my first series, The Countess Chronicles, includes 3 full books, which you can see there along that shelf. And then there's also a novella, and I've bundled them all into one ebook, and so I'm raffling off the entire series to one of you lucky attendees. So I'm just gonna do my random number generator again. And this time, the winner is Tabitha Stevenson. So congratulations, Tabitha. I will be emailing you after the event to make sure that you get your raffle prize. So thank you again to everyone who read tonight, everyone who joined tonight. Congratulations to all the winners. We have one more of these reading events planned. It is next Wednesday, July 7th at 7 p.m. Eastern. We have an amazing lineup, including Anna Bradley, Ruth A. Casey, Jana McGregor, and Terry Brisbane. So it's going to be a great evening to cap off a series of great evenings. Be sure to mark it on your calendar. In the US, that is a holiday week, so don't forget that Wednesday is Wednesday, even though it's going to feel like a Tuesday. And I can't wait to see you there. And if you've missed any of the readings, they are all available on my website or on my YouTube channel. So feel free to watch them anytime. So thank you again, and I will hopefully see you all in October. Take care.